I'm good.
Good, thank you. Alright, so welcome everyone to The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. This is a tournament race here between Xanadu and realjayhawk. This was scheduled at the last minute earlier this morning, so we just asked that there please no spoilers during this run. So we've got Xanadu, I believe, is a 17 seed, if I'm not mistaken, and realjayhawk is a 33 seed.
Yeah, their PBs are about 4 minutes apart, so should be a pretty good race to watch. So we see, of course, both runners and just getting into the castle for our escape. Not a lot special going on here. Just kind of walking through, getting down to the basement to save Zelda once again.
Yeah, this part of the game is really not exciting at all. Just a lot of movement and grabbing keys, grabbing Zelda, getting out. It's very basic.
Yeah, it certainly looks a little more basic than it really is. There's a lot of really small timing changes you can do to keep your time down. Like when you jump down, as we kind of just saw a few moments ago, after the first key, if you start hitting diagonal just after you land on the ground, you can actually go right down to the screen transition right through the tip of the guard's sword without getting hit. It's those kind of small things that you may not notice, but if you time it just right, it works out to your advantage.
Yeah, and they'll both be coming up to the ball and chain guard here. And there's a few different methods that you can use for this to defeat this guy. He holds a big key which opens up the cell where Zelda is. So you can see here we've got Xanadu throwing a pot and then slashing the guard 4 times. And then you had realjayhawk, I believe you did the 8 slash method. Both, there's not really a big time difference between the two of them, but throwing the pot can be a bit safer. That's really, I mean, it's a good option, and also you get a heart if you got lost a heart along the way. It's a good chance to pick one up there as well.
Yeah, if you're particularly unconfident or low on health, you can go for both pots. It only takes 2 pots to kill them. Of course, it's the slowest method, but definitely the safest. But as we saw with these two runners, we saw Xanadu pick up the pot. We saw RJ with the 8 slash, and they came out almost identically. Those two are very close to in time.
Yeah, I think that most of this race will be really close. It'll be probably be about screen for screen for a good deal.
Yeah, I believe we're both watching this for the first time with everybody else, so we should all be pretty well surprised, at least those of us who haven't seen it.
Yeah, I didn't watch this earlier, so I think I was still sleeping, but I missed it.
Yeah, they are screen for screen right now, and that's to be expected in this first part. It's back in this rat area where things can really kind of differentiate. There's a lot of different RNGs you have to accommodate for, and a few different strategies that can either help or hurt you.
Yeah, that was one of the big RNG points there, I guess, was the snake room. Depending on where the snakes are, it can really depend on how quickly you can get through that room. It's usually nice if they're all up against one wall or the other, because then you can just kind of walk right by them. But sometimes a lot of them will be in your way, or they'll turn around and come at you. So it's just how you have to make a really quick decision there about how you're going to handle the room before you move forward.
Yeah, so we saw Xanadu get the key rat go up, and Real J had it kind of stay down low. That's one of the big time savers. Is if you can keep him down low, kill him as soon as you see him, get the boomerang onto the key and just start walking away and have the boomerang catch up with you, can make a big difference in your time in this area. But both runners still very close to each other. It helps that our Real J got hit a little bit by that key rat, so it kind of helped even out that room for the two of them.
Yep, so it looks like we got a 558 escape from Xanadu and a 559 escape from realjayhawk, so they're only maybe about a second apart, maybe a little bit less even.
Yeah, now I don't know if both of them get the same card or not, but we saw Xanadu just get his, and we saw Real J just get his, so now we know.
Just like that, you find out. So this walk to Eastern is not that exciting either, unfortunately. You're just basically dodging a lot of enemies and just walking upstairs. It's not incredibly exciting.
Yeah, the guards all kind of follow the same path. It's when you get to the Octoroks that it really gets a little more dangerous. The kind of only real exception to that is the green guard in front of the cemetery. If you enter that screen too low, he'll be walking in a different pattern than if you're above the path, and it can mean the difference between getting hit by him or getting by safely.
Yeah, looks like they both had to kill an Octorok along the way here. Because they just kind of get in the way sometimes.
So we saw kind of another interesting deviation between the two runners that's very minor. We saw Xanadu just kind of walk underneath that Armos, go up the stairs, and just turn right as soon as he got up underneath that blue guard and didn't have to boomerang him. Where Real J boomeranged the blue guard to get past him because he was a little bit too close and risked getting hurt. It was a fairly recent find, as I understand it, that you can just walk that whole way without throwing the boomerang, and it's actually just a little bit faster.
Yeah, the whole idea behind it is that you don't want to spawn that blue guard. And so by doing that, you actually walk lower so that he doesn't come on the screen. And that will help you get by him without taking damage.
Xanadu getting through the skeleton room pretty safely. Our Real J had a little bit of trouble with the room. We had the third skeleton spawn. A little bit slower, but fortunately, since there's an abundance of pots, especially the one there in the middle, it's usually not too hard to kind of make up for it, because that third one will almost always spawn right by that pot. Both runners coming up on the big key skip. Probably the more dangerous part of this entire dungeon, because it's the first place in the run where you have to take intentional damage to get through, but it makes the room just so much faster, because the only alternative method is to kill everything in the room, which causes the anti-fairies to disperse and allows you to safely hit the button. Real J taking a little bit extra damage because it looks like he missed one of the hits. I'm not sure which one. Looks like he had to get hit twice by the Popo.
Yeah, he ended up getting hit a little bit early when he was trying to get around the Popo, and then so he had to take additional damage after that in order to hit the button, and then he'd missed the button, so he had to go back and hit it again. So that can happen sometimes. There is another method for that room where you just align yourself above those anti-fairies and you run into them to get the invisibility frames, and then also hit the button at the same time. It takes an extra half a heart of damage than doing it the way that we saw the runners do it, but it can be more consistent.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to kind of learn that method because you're right there when you get the invincibility frames. With the Popo method, you you get the invincibility frames a little bit further away, and you risk losing them before you get onto the switch.
Looks like both of them had a pretty good Zelda gamer room. Xanadu having a little bit of trouble with this red Igor here, but makes it through just fine. And now they both kind of are synced up a little better again.
Both runners using the same method to take down Armos. There's several different ways to do it, none of them significantly faster than the others. Most runners you'll see just use the upper right method. There's bottom right, I think you can even do the bottom left, and some will even stand in the middle. But that middle one takes a lot of arrows in a lot of different directions, kind of all at once to really get that one down. Very tough strategy.
So now they're both just coming up here on the boots. This is where the run gets a little bit more interesting because they can now dash and things will go a lot faster.
So we see Real J going for the Sahasrara Rupees. Xanadu opting to skip them and presumably go for the Tree Rupee route. Saves a few seconds. Real J also getting the bomb, so he'll be a little bit more well prepared for Hera and a few of the other bomb jumps coming up in the run. So right after Sahasrara's house is the first place where you see the super speed really come into play, and because you can't get it until you have the boots. But it's also one of the most effective places because it's such a long travel time for before you get to the last green, giving you quite a speed advantage.
I noticed that neither of them went for the spin speed on the way to the book. It's something that doesn't save much time at all. And it can be pretty risky. You can actually lose time if you don't get the spin speed right away and you keep trying for it. You're actually losing time at that point. So it is pretty risky to go for him.
Yeah, if you get it first try, it saves like 30 frames, so half a second. So if you miss it that first try, you're pretty much guaranteed to be losing time over not going for it in the first place.
Yeah, we saw both of them get the spin speed on the way out, which I believe saves a lot more time than on the way there, and it's less risky because if you miss it, well, the thing is that I guess, well, I forgot. I just lost my train of thought completely.
That happens.
Yeah, it's 10 o'clock at night. I'm just but it is less risky in the sense that it's easier to pull off, I guess, when you're leaving the house with that spin speed. You don't really have to get into a door at the right time, whereas you do on the way there. If you have spin speed on the way there and you're kind of dancing around the door, you're losing time, whereas on the way out you can just kind of run out and you're not having to do any precise movements.
Yeah, another very helpful factor on the way out is that you're already on that ladder. To get it on the way to the book, you have to kind of go a little bit out of your way to hit the stairs to actually activate the super speed. Because you can put yourself into the spin state, but you don't get the speed until you come off of a manual staircase or ladder like you see there. So Desert, another very straightforward part of the run, just a whole lot of dashing, not a lot of strategy to any of the rooms. We'll see this room that Xanadu's in, you have to kind of dash across and make sure you get that second popo. That's one of the most strategic parts of at least the first half of Desert. The second half will include key dashes, and then another similar room, but it's much more RNG based.
Yeah, this game is good in the sense where, when you pick up an item, it kind of almost forces you to use it and put it into use. So you can see this part of the dungeon, there's, long hallways and long parts of the room that you have to dash up towards. So you really get good use of the boots in this dungeon, I think, more than any other dungeon.
Yeah, the kind of thing about the first half is timing your dashes just right. And one key example is the run that we just saw Xanadu leave, and we're going to see our Real J get up to it here real soon. But as soon as you transition to this screen that Real J is on, if you dash right away, you'll get through that, I don't know, sandworm or whatever you want to call it, without getting stuck. But if you're just a hair too late, you will get stuck on him. So we actually saw Xanadu kind of go to the right side where it's a little bit safer.
Yeah, Real J went for the spin speed outside of desert, the first desert area there. Risky one to go for because you can actually jump off the edge and have to reopen desert and do that whole first part again, except grabbing the keys and the item. But it's pretty risky and it can actually save a lot of time, and the time gain from that is very, very minimal.
Yeah, so right now we see Xanadu quite a bit ahead of Real J, at least as far as you can be in something so early in the run. But with Landmo, it could go any which way for either runner, and they could easily catch up, or even have Real J pass Xanadu. So we will see how it goes. I like Real J having a bit of trouble in the room before that, but it's still very possible he could catch up even still. Xanadu getting some rough RNG here, taking quite a bit of damage in this fight.
We got Real J having a bit of trouble in the first cycle there as well. Opted to slash his sword on one of the landmos there. The sword slashes do half as much damage as the arrows do, so you would need obviously twice as many sword slashes than you would arrows. It's a good safety measure sometimes though, and you don't really want to run out of arrows here, but so sometimes slashing your sword is a good option.
Yeah, so it's 4 arrows per worm and 8 slashes. Or actually any hit of the sword for that matter. It's 8 spins, slashes, pokes. They all do just basically 1 amount of damage. So it takes 8 of whatever sword hit.
So Xanadu just pulled off a trick there called Fake Flippers. It is a Japanese 1.0 exclusive glitch. Basically what you're doing is jumping into the water on the same frame that you're transitioning a screen, and the game kind of gets confused, doesn't know where to put you, and just assumes that Link has the flippers, and so you can swim at that point. You're not going to be able to swim at any other point in the game though, without the flippers. So it's only useful, I guess, in this part here of the run. If you get hit along the way, however, you will soft lock the game. So it is pretty dangerous, or can be pretty dangerous.
Alright, so we see Xanadu just getting to the warp to the Dark World, getting into Hera very soon. Didn't look like he had too much trouble on Death Mountain at all. Lost 1 heart, not a big deal. RJH so far doing pretty well himself.
Yeah, Death Mountain is notorious for not being a nice place. And it's not a place where you want to take a lot of damage either, especially when you're going right into Hera, because Hera can be not very kind either. We do a bomb jump in this dungeon. It's the first one of the game, and you intentionally take damage. So I mean, not really that you're ever super low in hearts coming in here, but if you are, it's not really a fun time. So you want to have as many hearts coming in here as possible. There's a lot of enemies that can get in your way, and that can kill you.
Yeah, this tile room is one place where it helps to be pretty well set on health, because if you take too much damage here and you don't get through the upcoming Moldworm room, or if you get hit by the skeletons in the big key room or their bones before you get to the big key, you die and have to come back through and do this tile room again, which you can't really speed up since all of the tiles are on a timer. So it's quite a significant time loss for a very early part of the dungeon. So we see Real J here trying for the boomerang strat, where you item dash with the boomerang to hit the switch and hopefully land on the blue spikes at the same time as they come up, so that you get the invincibility frames, don't have to deal with any of the tiles until the last one. It's three pretty much identical, not identical, but frame perfect inputs to get that item dash, because you have to dash, hit Y at the same time, but you also have to hit down to make sure that the boomerang actually goes down. Otherwise, it's going to go right in front of you. And they all have to be on the same frame, or else you're either going to turn or you're not going to throw the boomerang. So it's quite a tricky trick to pull off for a relatively low payoff.
Alright, so we have Xanadu coming up here on the Moldorm fight. This one, I think, for casual players is probably one of the worst light world bosses, just because he can knock you off, and I don't know, I think that for new players, he's pretty unpredictable. Once you kind of learn the way that he moves, he becomes a little bit easier, but you still have to be really careful not getting knocked off, because if you get knocked off, then you have to come back up and start the fight all over again.
Yeah, Moldorm can be all over the place for casual playthroughs. I've seen plenty of people get him without any trouble. I've seen people have just as much trouble as we do when we're trying to run it. It's really interesting, given how just completely randomized his movement is, and the risk of falling down that middle hole. It sets you back 2 whole floors.
Xanadu had a pretty good fight there, though. Didn't fall off and cleaned up the fight pretty nicely. So he's going to make his way to the Master Sword now. And meanwhile, we have Real J just finishing up the fight here, taking some damage. You could see him dashing through Moldorm to hit the end of the tail that way. It is a strategy that we use sometimes. You kind of have to, I guess, judge it yourself with the way where Moldorm is, but sometimes you can even get hit. I think it's like isn't like a 2-pixel window or something where you can actually get hit.
Yeah, it's a pretty small window.
Yeah.
Xanadu being very careful here not to get hit so he doesn't mess up the tree rupee route. Sorry, I think I interrupted you.
Nope, you're good. I was just rambling anyway, so, you know. But yeah, we've got Real J on his way now to the Master Sword. He will not be getting tree rupees, so you won't see him pulling either of the trees on the way here. Tree rupees, I think, saves about like 6 or 7 seconds over the entire run, if done properly, so it's not a huge time save. But if you get hit along the way, then you do have to do some backups, which can actually waste a bit of time. So Real J's option of doing the cowboy rubies in a race is not a bad idea. It's pretty safe, I think.
Yeah, this game is full of things like that where it saves a pretty good a number of seconds on a trick, but if you mess it up, it starts losing time. So it's a balancing act. to decide if you're going to try for certain strategies or not. And it really just all comes down to how comfortable you are with them in general.
Yep, so we've got Xanadu making his way now to Aghanim's tower. The boss Aghanim is a very big RNG point in the game. He will spit out blue balls every so often, which don't do any damage to him, and he'll also spit out energy balls, which are what do damage to him when you hit them back at him. And so he needs 6 of those energy balls in order to kill him, and so it can get pretty annoying if he continues to throw blue balls at you. The worst RNG you can get is 15 blue balls, and the best you can get obviously is 0. The average is about 3.
So we saw Xanadu just do a sword beam strat on the blue guards here with the key, and then he dashed through them. So he dashed through them, so that would prevent them from dropping any items as part of their item pack. And what that does is helps pretty much guarantee a fairy and turtle rock. So every enemy is part of a different prize pack, which just means you get certain items from enemies and you get them in a certain order, whether it be a fairy and then some rupees or whatever the case is. It's always kind of in that order if they drop anything. So you can kind of use that to your advantage in this case to kind of ensure that based off the number of enemies we would traditionally kill throughout the run, you wind up where it falls just on that fairy when you get to the pokey in Turtle Rock.
Yeah, so Aghanim's tower is very similar to what we'll see later in Ganon's tower, just on a very much smaller scale. It's just a bunch of rooms where you know, in some of them you have to clear the enemies, and others you just have to avoid them, not take damage. But it's a very linear path, so you're just kind of following along and making your way through these doors to get to the boss.
So we saw both runners in the Circle of Pots room get the same RNG with the second red guard, where he was walking down. When you come into that room, he'll either be walking up and down or left and right. If he goes left and right, he's almost guaranteed to get in your way when you're trying to throw the pots at the one in the middle. So you kind of have to play it by ear every time you enter that room and see where that guy's going.
I don't think Xanadu has had any blue balls yet, so he's doing pretty good.
Alright, so we got his first one.
Wow, only one blue ball. It's pretty lucky.
Real J doing pretty well so far, I say, as he gets one blue ball.
I would say commentator's curse, but this happened earlier, so I don't think that's possible. So Xanadu's gonna make his way to Palace of Darkness shortly here. That palace has a very difficult trick in it, which we call the hammer jump, and it's 2 pixel perfect placements. but it saves, I think, about 40 seconds, so it's pretty nice time save. Looks like Real J only got one blue ball.
Yeah, he only had one as well, so very interesting.
It's kind of nice to see that, you know, one of them's not going to be way behind because of RNG. They're actually equal. Well, as far as that RNG goes anyway, they're equal in that sense.
Yeah, their Lambo fights were pretty close, really. So they had a very similar RNG and luck all around. We see them both had 122 rupees. Xanadu just spent his first 10. So it's kind of interesting that they both had the same number of rupees despite using two completely different paths for it.
Yeah, that is interesting. You'll notice that Real J does have more bombs, but that's just because he got the bombs from the hut where he got the boots. There's a chest with bombs in it, so you pick those up there.
So we see Real J just getting to drop off Kiki right in front of the pals, of course. He missed what's called the Kiki dash, where you dash up with him, stop just at the right spot where he catches up with you before you activate the text. So you don't have to watch him walk all the way up to where you're at and then hop on top of the building. Actually can save like 1 or 2 seconds, something in that range, which is just one of those small things that you wouldn't think has that kind of impact.
So Xanadu is about to come up on the hammer jump here. Ideally, what we do is usually use the menu to pause buffer, so it's just to move Link, usually about, I think, 1 pixel each time to get the right placement, and you want to have as many or as little pause buffers as possible. So you can see Xanadu's having some trouble here, but he finally gets it there.
Yeah, doing that hammer jump, as it's called, can save about 35, 40 some odd seconds versus going all the way up the falling bridge and going to the right and downstairs. So if you miss it once, it's okay. If you miss it twice, you might want to consider going the longer route, depending on your comfort level. But it also affords you quite a few buffers before it really costs you much time. So it's still quite worth it, even if you get a bunch of buffers before you get to your proper placement.
Yeah, Real J got that really nicely, only a couple buffers there, so it went a lot more smoothly for him.
So we saw JC in chat ask if auto pause for holding start or if it's timed presses. It is timed presses. So if you're not quick enough with the second pause, or if you're even too early, you can keep that pause screen on screen for a little bit longer, causing just a little bit more of a delay.
Yeah, Real J may have caught up just a little bit here since he had a better bomb jump. They're only a couple screens off from each other. They both have full health, which is good. It's going to be good for them for the boss fight, and also it'll save them from having to menu back and forth from the arrows to the hammer in these coming rooms that Real J is in, or is going to be coming up to.
Yeah, by not having the sword beams, you have to menu it twice. Once to get to the hammer or the boomerang or the arrows, and once to go back to the hammer that you need for the turtles. So it's like 2 seconds, I think, or so per menu if you're right on cue with changing to the item and getting the menu closed. So it's about 4 seconds lost just from that.
So Xanadu there went for the quick kill on Helmasaur. After you get his mask off, you can hit him with the hammer on the left side. I guess the Q is kind of near his tooth. You want to hit about there with the hammer, and it takes 3 hits with the hammer and then 1 sword slash, or sorry, a sword spin, and that is the quick kill. It's pretty precise and it can be pretty scary, but if if you're good with it, it's definitely the way to go.
Yeah, you have to get very close to him and really inside of his bright. So it puts you at a much greater risk of getting hit.
You can see Real J having some bad RNG here, a lot of fireballs and coming from Helmasaur, but he survives the fight with just 1 heart left.
Yeah, so that's I don't well, I guess the big key skip in Eastern is the first time we really saw the Sanctuary Heart come into play. It's only a few seconds to get, but it can make all the difference between dying and having to do an entire dungeon over again. So a few seconds to potentially save a few minutes if you know you're going to die is totally worth it. And we saw again for Real J that it saved him here with Helmasaur.
So we're gonna see, I think for the first time here, a trick called item dashing from Xanadu, and right there was the hammer dash. Basically, what you do is you hit the dash button and the item use button, whatever you want to call it, at the same time, and you basically do both of them at the same time. So it just helps you get through those pegs faster if you're doing it correctly.
Yeah, every item in the game that you, at least in your menu screen, can be used as an item dash in some form or another. Some of them more useful than others. Like here we see Xanadu with the shovel right before he gets the flute. You can item dash with the shovel, but it doesn't count for extra digs for each hole it appears on screen. It's only the last one that actually counts. So if you're watching somebody do 100% race or run, you'll see them not doing it for the digging game because you're just wasting your time and options for digging.
Item dashing is a Japanese 1.0 exclusive glitch, I believe. I don't think that you can use it in
Yeah,
any
that's
other
right.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, the same for the super speed that we saw from Xanadu on his way to the flute or to the bird. Also a Japanese 1.0 exclusive.
Fake flippers, which we saw earlier, is another one. So I don't believe that Xanadu. Oh yeah, Xanadu is not grabbing the magic powder, so he's just gonna make his way right into Thieves' Town. I'm not really sure. I'm not sure if Real J grabbed the powder or not, or the mushroom.
Yeah, I don't remember if he did or not.
I think that he may have skipped it during his last race and might not be grabbing it anymore, but I could be wrong. We'll see. Powder's a good safety to keep, I think, until you get really comfortable with the game and the run itself, and when you don't die very often or lose much health, because it's a pretty invaluable resource in this game. You can turn any anti-fairy into a fairy or any bunny beam into a fairy as long as it's not moving. So that can be really helpful if you're losing a lot of health in certain dungeons.
Yeah, so it looks like Real J did not go for the powder. So it's a very level playing field at this point for this run. So we just saw Real J open up Thieves Town, and if you noticed earlier when Xanadu opened it up, he kind of pulled it from the middle. If you pull it right from the middle, you wind up going further back towards that next, I guess, garden wall, if you will, right below the entrance. If you pull it a little bit to the left, it'll actually not throw you back quite as far. It's not a significant difference, but it's another of those small things that if you don't know to look for it, it'll just go completely right past you. So Thieves Town is another very straightforward kind of dungeon. Not a lot of anything special, really, until you get to the boss. And the boss is quite scripted. As long as you do everything the same way every time, it'll do the same movements every time as well.
Yeah, this dungeon, you mostly just have to be careful of your health. Everything, I think, does 2 hearts of damage. And then you've also got where Real J is right now, we call the Hellway, because, well, as you can see, it's just full of enemies, and Real J is getting knocked around a bit there. So you can definitely lose a lot of hearts in there if you're not careful. There is a certain pixel in that hallway that we call the God Pixel, and if you get on that pixel and you also get good RNG, you can make it through that entire hallway, just dash straight through it without taking any damage or hitting any enemies. But it does require both the right pixel and good RNG.
Yeah, we saw Real J get the right pixel, but unfortunately the RNG was not in his favor and got in his way, hit him, and just kind of set him back. And at that point, you kind of have to really quickly make some decisions about how you're going to move and hope you don't hit any more enemies. Unfortunately, he took quite a bit of damage, but it actually looks like both runners are quite close on health with only a half heart separating the two of them still.
Yep, so Real J is making his way downstairs to grab the maiden, while Xanadu is making his way into the boss fight. I think Blind is one of those bosses too that casually really intimidates a lot of players, and I think for new runners of this game can be really intimidating. Mostly just because there's heads flying around and there's lasers all over the place. Oh, and Xanadu takes a
Xanadu
death.
died. So one thing I'm kind of seeing come up in chat was that Xanadu, he used the hammer on the pot for the switch before going towards where you bomb the wall or the floor. Um, when you destroy a pot with the hammer, it doesn't actually hit the switch, but the hitbox for that switch is right very close to the top. So you're pretty much right on it as soon as the pot disappears, letting you hit it. It almost looks like the hammer hits it. And in some cases, it's faster to use the hammer to get through a pot. In some cases, it's faster to pick it up. It kind of depends on if you're just going to pick up the item underneath or walk all the way through it. Hammering takes a little bit longer before you can move again. Picking it up lets you move a little bit quicker. The difference is very minimal, but there is a difference.
So you'll see here, because oh, and Real J took a death too. Oh man. So they're pretty. They both took a death to this boss here. This is a really hard boss to come back into after you take a death. You saw that Xanadu kind of went on a heart hunting trip before he went back in, because refighting Blind with sword beams is much easier. We have a scripted fight where if you bring the maiden into the room and you're at the very top of the room before Blind actually spawns, then there's a scripted fight that you can follow. But unfortunately, when you have to come back for the refight, Blind is already at the top of the room, and you can't really do the scripted fight the way that you would be able to before, like by taking the maiden in
Yeah, so
earlier.
Real J struggling a little bit to find some extra hearts. Fortunately, he did find it. If you have powder in that very first room when you respawn, in the upper left is a pot with a bunny spinner underneath it. And if you powder the pot or pick it up and powder the bunny spinner directly before it starts moving, you will get a fairy, putting you at full health a little bit faster. So while that specific case doesn't make up for the time it takes to get it, it's those kinds of things that if you die a few times, it can make a world of difference.
Both of them got through the refight very nicely, though.
Yeah, realjay do a really good job with these sword spins from the bottom, not sword spins, sword beams from the bottom to take them out. An interesting thing about blind is that any way you can hit him, it always takes 3 hits to move him on to the next part of or next phase, I guess. So whether you have the tempered sword, the master sword, hammer, any of them will all take 3 hits per phase.
So you'll see both the guys get tempered sword here. It is much stronger than the master sword, and I think they'll both keep this throughout the rest of the run. You can actually fight Ganon with the tempered sword. It takes spin slashes sword spins instead of the slashes with the gold sword. It takes a little bit more time, but it is definitely faster over the gold sword route.
So we saw Xanadu leave the last house with the rupees in them in the Dark World. He's got 600 rupees now, thanks to 2 300 rupee chests. Sets him up for rupees for the rest of the run, even if he went for Gold Sword, actually. You need 500 for the flippers coming up, and then if you were going for Gold Sword, you would need 100. So he's actually in good position for both. But based on his splits, of course, and his seed, I definitely don't expect him to. And the same with realjay.
Yeah, I think that from both of them, we won't see any safeties really. So it should be a pretty even fight between the two of them, or even run, I should say.
So Xanadu got through the mummy room very smoothly. Didn't have much trouble at all, taking only about a half-hearted damage, it looked like, in the 2 rooms. I didn't see where it actually took the hit. But that room can go wrong very easily. So we'll see if realjay has similar luck. It seems like they're very close in all regards on luck and RNG so far, so I don't know what to expect.
This race has been very even so far, which has been like even just down, like you said earlier, to the rupee count. Was very even. So we'll see how it goes for him. A good strategy in that mummy room is you can actually boomerang the mummies to freeze them, so then they don't really get in your way. Usually for newer players, killing them is the best option, just so you can focus on getting the room done and not getting grabbed by the wall master.
Yeah, realjay having a bit of trouble having to use the sword to keep them at least out of his way. Doing a good job of it, though. A couple of interesting things about the statue or the way you have to move it. When we're moving statues, when we're doing these runs, you'll notice a lot of people are wiggling around quite a bit, because if you're wiggling, you actually move the statue a little bit faster than if you were just straight holding up or left or whatever direction. And then in that room, if you pull it just a little bit too far to the left, it actually will not activate the switch. So you have to be very careful to keep it pretty in line with that block that's in the room.
So we have Xanadu in the Mothula fight. This fight is can be pretty irritating. if Mothula hits any of those spikes, like if you hit him with the sword into the spikes, then it negates the sword damage, and so this boss fight can be pretty deceptive because you can think that you're doing damage when you're actually not doing any damage. Using the fire rod here is good. It's good to get Mothula away from the spikes so you can hit him a little bit easier. But Xanadu gets through the fight just fine there.
Yeah, had a very good fight. An interesting note, I guess not really that interesting, but with the mummy room, the second one, I guess, with the torches, you use a lot of magic there. So you only have one, maybe two hits with the fire rod to get him off the spikes. So even if you do use it, he can go right back up there. He may not even come down far enough. So you have to be very careful with timing those shots and deciding if you want to do it early in the fight or wait until a little bit later.
Yeah, another interesting point about this dungeon too, it is a Japanese 1.0 glitch where the the wall master can actually grab you as you're falling down the hole into the Mothula fight and bring you back to the beginning of the dungeon. It's probably happened to everybody, I'm sure, who's run the Japanese 1.0 version of this game. Incredibly annoying, but it won't happen to you in the US version.
Real J also having a pretty good fight too, staying very close to his opponent.
So Xanadu's making his way to Ice Palace now. This is a dungeon where you have to be pretty mindful of your magic if you're not grabbing the half magic, because you do need a full magic meter in order to kill or break the ice that is over top of Cold Stare in order to actually fight the boss. There are ways of getting around it, but definitely not something you want to rely on because it does require you to have full health. So this is another dungeon where keeping your magic is important.
Keeping your health is pretty important going into Ice Palace as well, because you can use sword beams in the second room to kill a jellyfish that has the key, letting you kill him a little more quickly as you get up to him to pick up the key. The alternatives being using the fire rod, which is still pretty fast, but takes a little bit longer for him to actually die because they actually sit there on fire for a couple of seconds or so. The other method being to just slash him and hope he's not electrified. If he's electrified, you get hit. It doesn't do anything to him, so you have to slash again, wasting a little bit of time. So we'll see here after Xanadu gets the flippers, he's going to go back to the portal, which takes you right outside of where the dungeon would be, just in the light world. But usually there's two Zoras that'll spawn right in that vicinity. One of them very frequently right in front of where you go to swim to the warp. So you have to judge that very carefully. Try and kill that Zora before he can hit you so you can maintain your health the whole way through.
We will be seeing, I guess, the third bomb jump of the run. No, the fourth bomb jump of the run. In Ice Palace, it skips the big key and the item in the big chest in this dungeon, which is the blue mail. Otherwise, I believe it takes about 4 or 5 minutes to get through the dungeon the other way.
Yeah, it takes quite a bit of time because you have to go get the big key, which is a bit of a loop, and then you have to do another sort of loop to get a switch hit so you can knock or push the block down like we do right after we do the jump. It's quite a significant time loss. The I guess negative of doing the bomb jump is that since we do that and skip so much of the dungeon, we're skipping a lot of rooms with a lot of keys and things like that. So if you die after that, you have to come back to everything pretty much the same way. You're just able to skip the key in that jellyfish room in the second room. That's about the only difference if you die anywhere after that bomb jump. We saw Xanadu just barely squeak over that Zora that got in his way. Very masterful swimming from Xanadu in that area.
It's always funny to see Real J there just use the fire rod on Azora, which was in the water, and it still burned him to death, which is just funny.
Very contradictory.
Yeah. Real J's having a bit of an issue there with the warps. That can happen. I think it's happened to the best of us, where you warp and then you warp back and then you warp back again. It can get pretty annoying. And it's funny, both of them two coming into this dungeon had trouble hitting that first ice. What is the guy? Like an ice skeleton? I don't even know what he is.
I have no idea.
They always reminded me of ghosts, kind of, I guess, because of the way that they come towards you.
Yeah, their whole animation
like
is very ghost-like.
Yeah. But they both had trouble hitting that first one coming into the room.
So we saw a little bit ago Xanadu using the hammer on an icy floor where there's a fire bar spinning around. Using the hammer or slashing your sword while you're changing directions helps keep you from sliding way out of control, giving you much better control over how you're moving, where you're going to go, making it much faster and easier to move around those icy floors.
Yeah, one thing I usually see from new runners or casual players is they have a lot of trouble on the ice and like trying to get through doors and stuff too. But if you dash on ice, you can actually get through doors and stairways and stuff a lot easier.
Old Stair Puff's getting a bit away from Xanadu, but doing a pretty good job. Looked like he tried to go for the quick kill where you poke dash him once or twice and then keep him in the corner, maybe get a spin, otherwise just continue slashing. But looks like he either missed the second one or just opted to go for one and tries to slash. But it's really hard to keep them up there towards the end of their life cycle, so it's very easy for at least one of them to get away from you.
Yeah, and that boss fight's pretty difficult because the falling ice, I believe, does 2 hearts of damage, and each of those cold stare puffs will do 4 hearts of damage if they hit you. Because the game assumes at this point that you have blue mail, so it would cut that down just a little bit, that damage down just a little bit if you had the blue mail. But since it's just kind of more of a time loss than any kind of gain in this fight to grab the blue mail, then cold stare does a bit more damage.
If you have powder right before cold stare, there's a room with an anti-fairy you can get powder for, use the powder on and get a fairy to heal yourself. But an interesting thing about the health is that because of the amount of damage they do, even whether you go in with full health or you go in 2 hearts down, it's going to take the same number of hits to kill you because it goes 4 hearts each time. Again, assuming you get hugged from the cold stare puffs each time. So it's only really worth your while to heal if you're maybe 3 hearts down or more.
Yeah, so Real J having some trouble here as well with the cold stare puffs getting away from him, but it cleans the fight up nicely as well. So we didn't get a death from either of them in Ice Palace, which is really good. Deaths in Ice Palace are not fun because you have to go through the entire dungeon again, and it's I think about 3 to 4 minutes of a time loss. So we have Xanadu in Swamp Palace. This is I think a dungeon that's pretty notorious for just being kind of boring. It's intended to be an early game dungeon. It's actually, I think, the second one. You would normally do this right after Palace of Darkness, but we do it later just for routing purposes. And yeah, so nothing here really does a ton of damage, and there's really not a whole lot going on here. Just moving from room to room, grabbing keys, and grabbing the items, and that's about it.
Yeah, because this is the second dungeon, it assumes green mail, it assumes the Master Sword, so everything dies pretty easily to the Tempered Sword. They don't do a whole lot of damage. The only real problem is that there's just a whole bunch of enemies that can get in your way to slow you down, take away some hearts if you get hit. So it's not impossible to die here, especially in the Argus fight, but it's usually pretty rare, at least in runners who have gone through it a few times. It doesn't take long to get at least the hang of this dungeon, but it does take quite a bit to optimize.
Yeah, there's a lot of little things. I guess this is kind of like escape in the sense where your movement is pretty important here. Just, you know, avoiding enemies and making your way through the doors properly and dashing properly and swimming properly and getting off the ladders properly. It's just all that kind of stuff can really add up if you're doing any of that incorrectly. This is the kind of dungeon where you can go through it like you always do and somehow lose 10 seconds and not really know where it went.
One weird little thing that we just saw from Xanadu is if you hit that switch with in that room that he was just in, and get far enough away, the water will disappear for a couple of moments before it's completely full. So it can be kind of hard to track just how full it is and when you're going to be able to move again. I don't think it actually has any real effect on time as long as you still get the movement cue right still. So this room that Xanadu's in is kind of almost the hellway of this dungeon, where if you kind of do everything just right, you dash at the right moment, you will get through pretty well unscathed, maybe taking a hit from a fireball as you're falling down the pit. Um, but if you get hit once, it can go quite wrong. You'll get hit by the fire bar if you're not in the right spot. You'll get hit by maybe one of the fireballs, and a few of the other, like the water. I don't know what those things are, little water balls bouncing around. So it can slow you down quite a bit if you don't get it just right.
So Xanadu's got the hook shot now. It's going to come in handy for him here and in many other places from here on out. It's a pretty useful item. It's actually the item that we use in this dungeon to defeat the boss. And you can also get these spin speed with the hook shot. Usually we just use our sword. Well, I guess you would charge up your sword and get the spin speed that way, but this one you can actually use the hook shot. It's pretty similar, I believe, in the way that it works, like with the inputs that you have to do. But it's what I've heard, it's easier.
Yeah, so if you're gonna go for super speed, once you have the hook shot, if you have it equipped, it's gonna be a little bit faster than using the sword spin method, because it takes a little bit of time to slash the sword. You have to let it charge, and then you have to quickly release it and hit A. Whereas with the hook shot, you just hit Y and A at the exact same frame, and then it just puts you into that state. The only thing you have to worry about with that is how far the hook shot shoots. So if you're on like some stairs or ladders, pretty much just gonna hit the stairs and come right back to you. But like coming out of Turtle Rock, you can use it there, and it might shoot all the way down to the mountain wall, and that
Saw
can kind of slow it down.
Xanadu. Sorry. We saw Xanadu trying to attempt the quick kill on Argus here, but didn't quite get it. I'm not sure exactly how the quick kill works, so I don't know if maybe he just didn't have it
Yeah, so the idea is you go into the room with your sword charged, or at least out. It doesn't have to be charged, I guess. And you item dash with the hook shot. It keeps your sword out, and it pulls one of the puffs to you and kills it because it's the tempered sword. If it was a master sword, it would take a couple extra swipes. And the key is to just keep hookshotting after that at just the right time to where your sword never goes away. If it goes away, you wind up in the spin speed or super speed state, rather, and you have to dash or take some damage to get out of it, and then try and do the whole thing again, or opt to just do it the normal way of just hooking and slashing each time. Yeah, so I think we see a question about why Xana paused there, and I think it's because he had to kind of reset himself to try for the quick kill, or the zero cycle, as that particular part of it is called. The goal being to kill all of the puffs before Argus has a chance to send them out, spinning all the way around him, even once. We saw him get the quick kill with the fire rod quite smoothly. Just took 2 fire rod shots at just the right time, and then shortly after release your sword charge. And as the Argus main part is going back up in the air, it hits your spin and kills him.
So Xanadu just making his way back up Death Mountain now. He's going to go get the second medallion and then make his way into Mire.
So this is where we could see another slightly recent change to the route. Xanadu could go for the Ice Rod right after getting Ether, so that he uses his first of his 2 bombs, and then when he gets into Mire, he'll use the last one, which will then switch him right to the Fire Rod since he doesn't have powder, setting him up to use the Fire Rod on a switch right after, saving him the need to menu at all. And it looks like he is going to go for that. I don't know how recent that is, but I do know it's a fairly recent change at least.
Ether versus ether argument. I've always called it ether.
So have I.
There's your argument.
Looks like Xanadu, though, unfortunately placed both bombs that he had, so he's going to have to try and find one, which with Mire is not too hard as long as you remember to do it. There's a slug coming up that has some if you kill him, and then he actually got lucky with that rock. There's kind of, I think, a 50-50 chance of there being a bomb or nothing, and he wound up getting the bomb there, so it worked out perfectly for him.
So Real J is making his way up Death Mountain right now. Hasn't taken any damage, which is really good, and he got spin speed, which is also really good.
Yeah, so we saw Real J, and I don't know if Xanadu did it, but going up that second ladder, he held the sword out and item dashed with the hook shot, which puts him into the super speed state. But since he's on the ladder when he did it with this and with his sword out, it actually lets him move pretty much at a faster pace up those stairs than you would even if you're just in super speed state. When he comes off of the ladder, he I don't know if you have to hold the sword, so you probably have to reactivate it. But then you still get super speed when you get off the ladder there at the top.
So we see Real J also going for the Ice Rod at this point too, so you won't see any deviations from their routes later on.
At this point, I'm expecting him to drop 2 bombs just to make it even.
Yeah.
But of course he doesn't.
Maybe he'll drop it on the way out, who knows?
So Mire is a dungeon where you want to try and maintain as much health as you can throughout. There's one spot where we take intentional damage to hit a switch to get a key, and then we intentionally take a bunch of damage in the boss fight Vitreous to get a quicker kill on him, hopefully 0 cycle, maybe 1. So you have to be very careful. If you don't have the powder, again, there's a anti-fairy right before Vitreous that you can powder, but if you don't have it, you have to be very cautious about your movement and how you handle certain rooms so you don't take that much damage, because these guys can be pretty hard hitting, these woods robes, I mean. So it's a very dangerous place to be sometimes.
And I believe this is the only dungeon where we see those whiz robes, right?
Yeah, they're the only ones where we see the white robed ones. We'll see blue ones in Ganon's Tower, and I think that's it. I don't think there's any others in any other dungeon.
Yeah, it's kind of strange how some dungeons have enemies that are exclusive to those dungeons, like those water balls in Swamp Palace. I think we only see them there.
Yeah, it kind of keeps you on your toes a little bit because you don't know what to expect. It's kind of a nice little variation in the dungeon, so everything doesn't seem so similar.
Yeah. Yeah, Myers one of these dungeons as well where I think that early on it's easy to get lost here because it is a lot of backtracking through similar rooms or the same room, and there's a lot of rooms in this dungeon as well that you can go through. I know that, you know, when I first started running this game, this is where I got lost most of the time, or I mostly got lost here, and I do see some newer runners struggle with making it or remembering where to go in Mire, I guess.
Yeah, it can be a very confusing dungeon for sure. We just saw Real J lighting up the torches, and we saw him using the fire rod. We saw the same thing from Xanadu, where he pushed one of the blocks, and as it was moving, he was able to use the fire rod and go through it. And we'll see that later again with the hook shot. But while it's moving, it's not really considered an object that can really get in your way, except keep you from walking through it. But it lets you use items through it, which saves quite a bit of time there, because otherwise you have to move for all four of them. All four of the torches, you have to move the top and the bottom blocks, and then move the middle block either up or down, so you can walk in, hit the lantern or fire rod, and hope that you get the timing good enough for all four of them.
So you've got Xanadu coming up on Vitreous Fight here. This is a boss where you take intentional damage in order to kill all these little eyeballs. Looks like he actually got the... Oh, he was really close to getting a 0 cycle there. But pulls the fight off very nicely.
Yeah, very straightforward fight for him. Not a lot went wrong, but a lot of things can if you take a lot of... If you have one of the eyes come out at you, it can do a lot of damage. We see Real J coming up on this room. If you dash right into that whiz robe as he's shooting, you can actually wind up despawning the heart that's in that middle pot. So we saw them both kind of dodge him a little bit to keep that heart there so they could refill. So again, one of those small things that if you don't hear it or see it, you won't know why those things are done that way.
Actually didn't.
There's a lot of those small little things in this game.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that. That's pretty interesting though.
Yeah, it has to do, I think, with the having too many sprites on the screen at the same time, and it results in not being able to generate the heart. So Real J just using his last bomb, as we saw, switching him to the fire rod because he doesn't have the powder, which he uses right here, just to kind of show the payoff from getting that ice rod when they did. Otherwise, there's really no reason to go get it at any point in time other than any time when you're already fluting, because you have to flute to the same number. It always starts on 1, so it doesn't cost you any time to go get it in any segment, as long as you're already working on fluting, really.
We saw Xanadu have a bit of trouble there with menuing, trying to get to the mirror.
So both runners getting a 1 cycle Vitreous Fight. Real J having a little better luck with his sword spins, though, able to kill all of the little eyes without having to use any of his arrows.
Ooh, looks like Xanadu got a little bit of blockage there from the squirrel. Tried to despawn it, but it didn't work out for him, so he just ended up having to wait there.
Yeah, fortunately, since it didn't despawn, it didn't really cost him any time because he would have had to wait the same amount of time either way. Another option would have been to go back into the cave and come back out, but because of the transition period, it probably would have actually been just a little bit slower. Again, one of those small time differences where you can do it and risk losing a little bit more time, but be safer, or just hope that you can save that extra little bit of time.
I think that earlier on in one of the earlier races in the tournament, somebody in chat had asked, you know, for all the runners, if there was one enemy that you could take out of this game, which one would it be? And I think the majority of the runners said it was those squirrels, just because they can cause a lot of trouble and they can get in your way, like at any point, really, when you're on Death Mountain. And it's really not a place where you want them to get into your way, because you've got Death Mountain where you have all these boulders falling down on you, and if you've got a squirrel in your way, and you have these boulders falling down on you, you can definitely take a lot of damage, and it's really not a place where you wanna be stuck.
Yeah, so I'll come back to the dead rocks here in a second, but we're seeing Xanadu use the hook shot here to grab a hold of one of the torches, pull them off the platform quickly so they can go right to this room. Saves quite a bit of time. Otherwise, you have to wait even longer before you can use the fire rod, and then wait for it to get all the way back. But to kind of go back to the dead rocks, we saw Real J have one of the dead rocks kind of spawn on top of him. Well, not spawn, but stop on top of him because he was invincible from the hook shot, which can block you. Not something you see too often. Another weird thing that can happen with them is if you dash into them, if you hit them wrong, you'll bonk off of them, take damage, and they won't turn to stone. So you still have to swipe them and get them out of your way. And sometimes you might redash like I've done and do the same thing again, only to again not have them turn. So they're very weird enemies in this game.
So Xanadu did not get the fairy drop. I don't know if he got another one earlier on. He did get a heart drop though. But he's pretty full anyway. He didn't really need a fairy drop there. So I think that one heart drop was probably sufficient enough.
Yeah, so that's going all the way back to Aghanim's tower, where we saw them both runners dash into those blue guards in hopes that they would get the fairy there. Fortunately, like Emma said, he didn't need it, so it did work to his advantage. But that's the room where you would see the fairy appear. We still have a chance to see it appear for Real J, but he's doing pretty well on health already as well. Neither one of them having too much trouble with Death Mountain, so they didn't take a lot of damage there.
Yeah, Xanadu's in really good shape right now. He's full on hearts and he's got a good deal of magic here, so he's going to probably, hopefully, have a pretty easy time in Turtle Rock. One spot where a lot of runners can have trouble is the Chain Chomp room, which Real J is coming up on here. Those chomps do 4 hearts. Oh, he did get it. But this Chain Chomps can do 4 hearts of damage, and they can get in the way of the block when you're trying to hit it with hit the crystal with it. So it can get pretty crazy in that room sometimes if it doesn't go well for you right away.
Yeah, and I believe if the block is just hitting on the ground, if they charge into it, they can actually despawn the block altogether too.
You could slash that Stealthos when you get off the floating platform. I assume you're talking about in that, I guess, second room of Turtle Rock. You really only want to slash things if they get in your way. That Stealthos actually throws bones at you when you hit him, and so he could have taken damage there. So if it wasn't in his way, it would not have been... it wouldn't really been of any use for him to hit it or kill it.
Yeah. So with that Chain Chomp coming up, it's all about health management. So, like Emma said, if you hit him or try to when he throws a bone at you, it's very likely to hit you because you're so close to him. So you have to kind of judge that carefully. And we saw with Real J, he got hit back onto the platform, but off to the side. He almost fell, sending him back to the beginning of that second room. So he actually got kind of lucky there.
So here we will see the Ice Rod's time to shine. This is really the only spot that we use the Ice Rod in the game. And you can see Xanadu having a bit of trouble there with the start of the fight. He did what we call the backdoor strat, where you go behind Trinex, hit him with the Ice Rod from back there. And I think that it's supposed to... from back there, I mean, at first it's a little bit faster, you can hit them a little bit sooner, but also it's supposed to be a little bit safer because I don't think that they have a chance of hitting you with their fire or ice shots when you're up there.
Yeah, the goal being when you get back there, you can hit the heads a little bit sooner after they move so that you avoid, hopefully, him shooting his head out that first time. If he shoots his head the first time, you're not really gaining much time over just doing the, as it would be called, the opposing front door strat. And kind of to play off of Emma's comment about the ice rod, going back to Ice Palace, if you die at Cold Stare, you're out of magic, so you have to find a way to get magic. Usually there's those buzz blobs out front that you can kill to get magic. We kind of have to hope for the best with that, and it can cost quite a bit extra time because you have to find the magic and get back into the dungeon so you can actually complete it. Some runners might have to go to Swamp Palace and then come back because you'll be fully restocked at the end. But one thing you can do with the Ice Rod, which is kind of where I was going with all of this, is that if you use the Ice Rod and then hammer an enemy, if you have the magic to do so, it's almost guaranteed to drop some kind of magic. So if you're looking for magic in a casual playthrough and you have just a little bit, or if you have half magic, it's a good way to do so.
So we got Xanadu making his way to Ganon's tower, and Real J is just finishing up the Trinex fight here. He did not go for the backdoor strat, so you think he's having a bit of an easier time. But it looks like they're both going to finish the fight with about the same amount of health.
So both runners staying quite in line with each other, not very far behind one another.
Yeah, it can all come down really to the Ganon fight. We have seen it before where somebody's been way ahead but had a lot of trouble on Ganon and their opponent caught up and won the race, or caught up and didn't finish very far after them. So while Xanadu is ahead now, there's a big possibility that Real J can catch up.
Yeah, Ganon's tower has a few places where if you die, it can cost a lot of time. Most notably being after the gauntlet, because you have to go through everything again. Again, maybe missing one or two keys, but otherwise you have to deal with the rooms the same as you did before, killing the enemies and getting through. So any death in Ganon's tower can mean the world of difference between two racers.
So Real J is just making his way into Ganon's tower now. I don't know if you want to explain the Ice Armos Ganon Bats thing.
I'm not an expert on it, so I'm kind of hesitant to do so. But basically, when you're fighting the Ice Armos, there's this sort of counter that's going. This is more just a neat fact. It doesn't really do a whole lot for the run. But if you kill them, you get up here and you get the big key and maybe the arrows and you mirror out, there's a timer that just stops. So when you get to the Ganon fight, it kind of dictates where the fire bats around him spawn, the fireballs and the fire bats. It's fairly inconsequential, but it's an interesting fact nonetheless. There's actually a video by Super Scudge on YouTube all about it. If you look for arc variable, ARC, he does a great job of explaining the entire thing.
And that's a very recent find, actually. I believe it was just about a month ago that they had discovered that.
Yeah, at least that's about when the video was uploaded. I'm assuming they found it shortly before.
Ooh, so Real J accidentally picked up that second pot, which we usually bonk off of to get over an invisible hole, I guess, on that side. But he accidentally picked up that pot, so at that point you just have to leave the room and come back to respawn that pot.
Yeah, so dashing and picking up items or objects is the same button. It's A. So if you're facing, of course, a pot, or I guess if you want to call these things pots or skull heads, of course you'll pick it up instead of starting a dash. If you're right next to them, or any object you can grab as well, like blocks, if you're facing a different direction than the block, start the dash. You can actually turn towards it, and your dash will continue, allowing you to bonk into it without having to take steps away from it or hope your distance is just right. It's a trick, I guess, if you really want to call it a trick, that we'll see referred to as a dash turn. I don't know if there's any other name for it. Then going back to that arc variable thing really quick. So, like I said, it's inconsequential because it just dictates where the bats spawn. It's not going to do anything for where Ganon warps to, or what Ganon's behavior is during the fight. It just dictates the spinning fireballs and fire bats.
I guess the biggest positive of that is that if you know where the Ganon or the bats are going to start spawning from, you can, I guess, move accordingly, but it's really not that big of a deal. I mean, getting away from those bats is not like a difficult task at all, so knowing where they're spawning is not, a huge deal. It's just a really cool little thing that was found.
So Xanadu going up these stairs, we saw him go for some magic in there, which of course we need so we can light these torches, and really it's just for that. But if you're too fast in that room and you get up those stairs at the same time that the doors from the previous torch room close, it can despawn all of the sprites in the game. So, or at least in the dungeon. I don't know quite what its reach is. So that means no Moldorm 2, which means no chest, and if you happen to hover across, you can get to Aghanim's room, but he's not there. Your only option is to save and quit, which of course is not allowed in these runs, or mirror back out and start all over again.
And that happened to Blue Viper 85 here during a 100% run.
Yeah, I was about 2.5 minutes ahead of my time. I was going for sub 2 at the time. It was still a better run than what my current PB is. And I was so upset when that happened. I wound up like plus 5 or 6 minutes because of that.
Yeah, I think that it was
happened
like
to you sort of recently too, just in a different manner, right? Because you were in Moldorm 2 and something happened that we don't really understand, right?
Yes, I don't really know what happened. I fell off to Moldorm and then went back and killed him. Went to hookshot across those blocks after you kill him to like get into the room before Aghanim too, and the screen kind of wrapped, and then I ended up back where the Moldorm fight happens. And the cool thing about it is that you could actually still hear Moldorm. He makes that weird noise when he's moving around. You could still hear that, but you couldn't see him.
Yeah, and that happens
there were no sprites. Everything was just spawned.
Yeah, that actually happens in the other sprite glitch method too, so I think it's just a sound for the room. It's quite an interesting choice, because it does stop when you kill him anyway.
Yeah.
Xanadu having a pretty good Aghanim 2 fight. Not much different, really, than the first Aghanim fight, except that there's 2 clones. Those clones always shoot energy balls. Aghanim himself can still shoot blue balls, but there is no lightning round, so the blue balls only cost the amount of time for that blue ball to dissipate and move on to the next attack. One weird thing about the fight is if 2 energy balls hit him within the same frame window and it's not on the same frame, there's a couple of frames, I don't know the exact number, it only counts as 1 hit. So when that happens, it's hard to know if you got 1 or 2 until you get up to the 5th and 6th hits and see if he dies or not.
Xanadu now only at 2 hearts of health, so he's going to take this a lot more carefully, I think, because a death would be pretty costly at this point, especially with Real J coming up on, or about to finish Moldorm 2 here.
So we see Xanadu just kind of walking around and using the hookshot to get by the bats as they appear. The hookshot does give you invincibility frames, so they can fly right through you. So he did a pretty good job dodging those. Definitely playing it safe here with these 2 hearts.
And I feel like I have PTSD or something from that glitch, because every time these days when I watch somebody go from that room from Moldorm 2 into the next room, I'm always like, oh my god, is the screen gonna wrap? I'm always like expecting it to happen, and I breathe a sigh of relief when it doesn't.
Yeah, I have a very similar reaction every time I see somebody go up those stairs. I always hope that that door closed. So I hate it when I don't have audio on the stream for whatever reason. Maybe they're playing music or I have it off. Always get very nervous on that screen, especially
Yeah.
when I'm getting through there myself on PB pace.
Yes.
Xanadu not having a bad Ganon fight so far, getting most of his spins. Looks like he just missed one. I don't think he's missed any others yet. Still kind of early in the spin cycle, though.
Meanwhile, Real J only has 1 heart, finishing up Aghanim 2 here, so there is a fairy at the bottom of the pyramid right before the Ganon fight. And we have Xanadu finishing up the fight here, so he appears to be the winner unless he walks off the edge.
Which we have seen happen, not necessarily during this tournament, but we have seen it happen where somebody falls off by accident after doing that, and unfortunately it means you have to do the whole fight all over again.
So Real J did not opt to go for the fairy. As I was saying before, at the very bottom of the pyramid, there's a tree that you can bonk into in the Dark World, and it drops a fairy. And usually it's a good place to stock up on health if you need it, or to grab a fairy in a bottle. Real J opted not to do that and paid the price right there because he took a death.
So being a restream of race earlier, I don't know if either runners are going to be around for any kind of commentary, but I think we can at least attempt to see if either one's available. So we just saw, excuse me, Real J use a spin, and I'm sure we saw it with Xanadu. Unfortunately, I did not see it, where you get the first 2 or 3 hits in after the text stops and you spin. You hit the trident as it's spinning, so you get kind of a double hit on him. It helps you get what's called a kind of a 1-in-1. So you get the first cycle before he warps again. You get the second cycle before he warps again, which is where the time saving here really comes into play versus the gold sword and silver arrows. But it takes quite a bit of time to get those, a couple of minutes. You wind up potentially saving up to about a minute with tempered sword if you get that 1-in-1. If you don't, you're looking about breaking even.
Yeah, I'm not sure if either runner is around, so I don't know if we'll be getting any interviews.
Yeah, I'm not seeing them in the chat, unfortunately, but it's not impossible while we wait here for Real J to finish his run. It is kind of late, especially for the East Coast, so I don't know where Xanadu is for sure.
Oh, Dark Magician says it's 4 a.m. for him, so he probably won't be around.
Yeah, definitely not, but at least we tried.
Yeah.
There's so many people in this race, it's hard to keep track of who's where.
Yeah, very true. A lot of people from Europe in this race as well. So Real J finishes up there very nicely. Oh, are we gonna see the...
Looks like he was trying for the moonwalk. I don't know if he got it because he got the sword instead of the fire rod. But if you item dash with the fire rod and I think he did get it. Link will go all the way down to the bottom and walk backwards all the way back up into the door. A very fun little trick. Does very little. Definitely does not save any time.
It's mostly just for swag, but we all know that swag points count for more than anything in these runs, so...
Yeah, so both runners finishing reasonably close to their PBs. Real J was about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes behind. Xanadu about 2.5 minutes. Very good runs from both of them. Very close race. Very
even race as well.
Yeah,
which was
like we saw with
really
the rupee
interesting
count and everything.
Same RNG, pretty much same deaths throughout the run as well. So yeah, I guess that concludes the race for today. I'm not really sure when our next race is. I think it might be on
Uh,
Wednesday.
yeah, I'm pulling up the schedule right now. Looks like there is one tomorrow actually, um, between Zelna and AJ Neb at 3 o'clock Eastern time, if I'm reading this right. So I don't know if it's going to be restreamed here or Speedruns Live or even if at all. So just keep an eye on Twitter, keep an eye on this Speed Gaming and Speedruns Live on Twitch TV to see if that race gets restreamed or not. Otherwise, you can watch the individual runners. Like I said, it's Zelna, XELNA, and AJ Neb and EB 174 tomorrow about 3 o'clock Eastern time.
I'm having a bit of trouble pulling up the bracket. I don't know if it's just on my end or what. So I'm not really sure who's going to go up against who. As Xanadu and Real J, who they're going to go up against next, or if that was Real J's last race.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not sure either. I'm also having trouble pulling it up. But there is a link in the info below for both the schedule as well as the bracket. And then, just like somebody already did the command, so you'll see them in chat here shortly as well.
Yeah, so I guess Challenge is just having some issues. So I guess we'll find out. Sorry about that dog. We'll find out once that comes back up who these guys are going to be going up against.
Yep. But other than that, I think that's gonna do it for this race. We appreciate everybody hanging around, and we'll definitely see everybody as this tournament continues. It's definitely been interesting. So lots of good races to come as we get further and further into the bracket. Lots of closer runners running together.
Yeah, definitely. There'll be a lot more races like there were today, where they were just both very close and almost screen for screen, where anything can happen. So make sure you stay tuned. Like Blue Viper said earlier, just stay tuned to this channel, Speed Gaming and Speedruns Live, and just make sure you pay attention when the races are coming up.
Yep, and watch the schedule because, like we saw with this race, it was added just a few minutes before it happened. So there could be wind up being another one or two scheduled for tomorrow if everything's able to work out. So just keep your eyes posted on all the channels and on the schedule, and hopefully you won't be able to miss one.